So we're talking about transformation, we're talking about evolving, we're talking about changing, and we're doing it all the time. We're doing it in this moment. You won't be the same when you leave here today. You won't be the same 2 minutes from now, because we're evolving, we're changing. With every thought, with every action, we change. And it's because life is working through us. You know, the universe, God, works through us. You know, if we open and we let it, see, we can evolve, consciously or not. When we're open and we let this life force move through us, life is so much better. And on a clear day, I love that, because on a clear day we can see that, you know. I'm not talking about a clear day out there, it's a beautiful day, but I'm talking about a clear day in here, right? When you really know it, when you're in sync with this universe, when you're in sync with God, and you know that your life is just on target, and you are, moving with the universe itself. So we're talking about this metamorphosis. I love the butterfly video because it's so much like us, being able to go through the stages and shedding the skin and all the stuff that we go through in our life, and we do it by shifting our consciousness. I mean, we shed our skin too, and get older. But the idea that I'm talking about today is our shift in our consciousness, this process of becoming better, a process of becoming more refined. And how do we do that? And to tell you the truth, we all do it different ways, but mostly it comes when we hit our bottom. It comes when we go through the stuff of our life and let it refine us, let it make us better. And we can go throughout history and look at the spiritual teachers and see, the biggest lessons in every one of the traditions is about the pain that a spiritual teacher went through, and this beautiful butterfly emerges. So I got to thinking, and went back and I looked at Jesus, at Buddha, at Krishna, at almost every one of them had these painful experiences, but the one that I got the most out of was Eckhart Tolle, because he's a current spiritual teacher. He's one of the top spiritual teachers now that really impact my life. So I was reading about his transformation, and I want to talk about that because through his painful experience, we can learn about it. So we've talked about this a lot in our Eckhart Tolle class, and that's why we do Eckhart Tolle, because he's so profound in his insights. And here's what he says, is that he had little use for the past, and he rarely even thinks about it now. But he says, I'll briefly tell you how I came to be a spiritual teacher and how his book came into existence. He said until he was 30 years old, he lived in continuous anxiety that was interspersed with periods of suicidal depression. And he says now it feels like he's talking about past lifetimes, that it seems like so long ago. But he says that one night after his 29th birthday, that he woke up in the early hours with this feeling. And when you hear him talk, he talks about absolute dread. You almost feel it while he's talking about it. He said he woke up many times before, but this time it was so intense, this grayness, this terrible depression just went through him. And he said the silence that night was so powerful that he saw the vague outlines of the furniture, he heard the train pass in the background, and he says he just felt so alien, like he wasn't of this world. He felt meaningless, that he had a deep loathing for life and a deep loathing more for himself, which I thought was really interesting. He said his own existence was a horrible thing to even think about. So he went to sleep that night, and he says, I felt a longing for annihilation, for non-existence. And it was becoming so strong that night. So he goes to sleep. And I don't want to take up too much time, but what happens is he gets woken up, he wakes up, and there is this inner transformation, just like this. And he gets this epiphany. And here's what he said about this epiphany. He wakes up first, and instead of this gray, he sees like the birds outside, and they're chirping, and everything's glittery and sparkly, and he just feels this joy of life. He feels peace, he feels joy. And he says that he realized that, here's what he realized, here's his epiphany. Who is the I that cannot live with the self? All of this depression that he had, he's realizing, who is depressed? Who is that person that's depressed? And he realized that's not who he is. It's the I, it's the ego. He said, what is the self? And he had this drawn in version of this void that he was in. And he says to himself, I didn't know at the time what was really happening, but it was the mind-made self, our ego, that's our stuff that we have in our head, and its heaviness, its problems, that lives between the unsatisfied past and the fearful future. And all of that collapsed for him. He just let it go in that moment. It all dissolved. And the next moment, he woke up to pure peace. He said just the sense of presence or beingness was who he was. And his whole work has been based on that. He doesn't talk about his experience hardly at all anymore, but what he talks about is what came out of that experience. And for me, that is huge, and it's powerful to see that those experiences are pretty much the same as many, many teachers have had through it. Now, there's good news and bad news. I don't think we're going to go to sleep tonight and wake up enlightened tomorrow. It's going to be a different process for us, although, I mean, it could. But what's going to happen is that it's a process. It's over time. There's a little bit of time that it takes. It takes practice. It takes centering. You know, it takes all of it. That's how we're transformed. You know, he says that our process is usually a long process. And that when we go through the process of opening our hearts and being able to see from this level, see that we see deeper, that we see more clearly, we see life for what life is. And the truth is that we see the truth. And what is the truth is that we're the butterfly, right? We are the butterfly going through this process of shedding our skin. And when we get it, you know, let the I get out of the way, let the ego get out of the way, we fly. That's who we really are. That's who we really are now. And what we find out is that everything is consciousness. Everything is consciousness manifested out as you, Holly, as you, Stacy. Each of us are manifested as human beings, but we are consciousness informed. We are pure love. We are the butterfly, and we are limited right now. And we just see very narrowly. So if I was to ask you, this is the teaching from it wasn't the Dalai Lama, it was another Lama, but he would say, what do you see up there? Tell me what you see. Who can see? Yell it out. Seagull. What do you see on the screen? Seagull. Okay. A bird, a seagull. Now here's the teaching. He says, no. You know, you see that, but your focus is narrow, it's limited. What you see is the sky. The sky is bigger than the seagull that you see. Do you understand what he's saying? He's saying that our focus is so narrow that we see small. That when we live in our heart and we open up, we see so much bigger. And that's what transformation is about. It's about opening our heart and seeing bigger, seeing bigger. Proust said that the voyage of discovery is not in seeking new vistas, but having new eyes. And that's what transformation is about. It's about opening up and seeing with different eyes, not just our eyes here, but the eyes of the heart. Seeing with deep, deep visions. It's what all of the traditions have talked about for years. It's what William Blake said in his poem, to see the world in a grain of sand. It's what Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk, speaks about when he talks about interbeing. Interbeing is being able to see this piece of paper and being able to actually see the tree and the clouds and the water in it, knowing that everything is so connected in life, that we aren't these isolated human beings, that we are connected to every piece of flower, of tree, of each other. You know, we're connected, that there is one being in the universe and we're part of that, you know, and that's what we're talking about, seeing from this bigger perspective and not this little human perspective. And it's about seeing two realities at the same time. It's about knowing that we're human and we do our human thing, but we're so much more, that we're the possibilities. When we know who we are, shift. Every opportunity is there for us. You know, but we give way to our smallness, and we live in our smallness. And if we could open up and live in this grand butterfly that we are, our lives would change. So how do we do it? The truth is that grace does it. We're transforming every moment. And when we open up and align, grace moves through us. Grace is the power of God, the power of the universe, the power of life in your life. How does it work? It works when you just open up, you align, and you know that there's something bigger than you know? And it doesn't mean just because we're growing old, doesn't mean we're growing up. Isn't that interesting? You know, we think just, you know, my kids say that, you know, that grandma's the wisest because she's the oldest. You know, they're right, I am the wisest. I'm the wisest in the house. But it's not because I'm the oldest. You know what I'm saying? That it doesn't matter. We have to consciously choose it. We have to consciously choose that we want to transform, that we want to be better. We got to choose that we want to be better humans. We got to choose if we want a better life. We just can't lay down and wait. We open to ourselves to God. We see with a different eye. We open our perspective to life. We know that we're a process. Just like I said today, we are a process. We're not a solid being. I mean, even scientifically, we're not solid beings. We're a process. Do you know that our cells, I love this, our cells regenerate all the time at different speeds. Our liver cells, every 6 weeks you have a new liver. Isn't that interesting? Stomach cells every 3 days. Eye cells, 48 hours or less. You have new parts, you guys, new parts. That just blows me away. So we are transforming our bodies, but are we transforming our consciousness? We have to choose it if we are. We have to open it. And we know what happens when we realize that our inners are more important than our outers, right? As soon as we get it here, that everything happens within. Everything happens within. When you choose, you create what happens out there. It doesn't matter. I love this. It doesn't matter so much what happens around you or to you, but what happens in you. Anything could be going on, It doesn't matter in your life, really. What matters is how you deal with it. How are you dealing with it? How are you able to take it in and to put a different energy on it? We let life move through us. Joseph Campbell, I love him. And what he says is that, people always say they're seeking a meaning for life. And he says, I don't think that's what we're seeking, not a meaning for life. I believe we're seeking an experience of being alive. And I totally love that, because I believe that's what transformation is all about. It's about being present to the very, very moment, to just being open and alive and loving your life and hating it when you have to hate it. That's okay. You go through it, you feel it. That's part of the whole transformation. It's being open and knowing that God is working through it. Hafiz is a 12th century Sufi master, and he says, we all have the divine invitation. Will we meet God dancing or on a stretcher? Don't you love that? How are you going to meet God? Dancing, loving your life. That's what transformation is about. So I'm going to close with this reading so Judy can talk. And I love this. And she says, to deeply see means to allow oneself to be present. Simply that. To occupy the moment. Simply that. To observe. Simply that. To act from your seeing. Simply that. To bring oneself into this world with integrity and sensitivity. Simply that. To know the world and know yourself directly in the here and the now. Simply that. To be open and to be permeable in the world around us. Simply that. To transform. Simply that. And that's my prayer for each and every one of us, is that we simply perform. We simply transform. We simply transform. That's my prayer. Thank you.